Meredith.
All right, the recording is started.
Thank you. I'm calling the February 9th meeting of the Transportation Advisory Board to order. My name is Trini Willerton, and it's 6 p.m. Veronica Son is the technical host. So, Veronica?
I'm gonna share screens. Let me know if you can see them.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you for joining the Transportation Advisory Board meeting to strike a balance between meaningful, transparent engagement and online security. The following rules would be applied. This meeting has been called to conduct the business of the City of Boulder. Activities that disrupt, delay, or otherwise interfere with the meeting are prohibited. The time for speaking is limited to 3 minutes. No person shall speak except when recognized by the person presiding, and no person shall speak for longer than the time allotted. Each person shall register to speak at the meeting using that person's real name. Any person believed to be using a name other than the one they are commonly known by will not be permitted to speak. Please use the raise hand function to be recognized for public comment. If you're on the phone, you will need to press *9 to raise your hand and *9 to unmute. No video will be permitted except for city officials, employees, and invited speakers and presenters. All others will participate by voice only. The technical host at the meeting shall enforce these rules by muting anyone who violates any rules. The Q&A function is enabled. It will be used for individuals to communicate with the host. It should be used for technical and online platform related questions only. If an attendee attempts to use Q&A for any other reason other than seeking assistance from the host, the city reserves the right to disable the individual's access to the chat. Only the host and the individuals designated by the host will be permitted to share their screens during the meeting. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Veronica. The next item is the approval of the January minutes. Has everyone had a chance to read through them?
Yes, I have, and I move to approve.
I
Wonderful. Is
second.
there a second? Ah, so all in
I second.
favor, raise your hand and say aye.
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 Aye. Wonderful. Motion passes. Thank you. Our next is our public comment. We welcome your comments on anything pertaining to transportation and mobility in the city of Boulder right now. Please use the raise hand function on your screen to be recognized and state your full name. You will have 3 minutes to speak. Veronica, do you have anybody that is wishing to speak?
I'm going to give it a few seconds. Okay, we have one person, Lynn Siegel. Would you be able to confirm you're able to unmute?
Yeah, I'm on the phone with the HRC because their link is not up. I'm livid. Yeah, there's trouble all over town with transportation issues. And I can tell you this, it's not getting any better with Sundance and with the 55th and Arapahoe site that basically has no, it's like a sprawl, an islanded sprawl with no services around it, like what's it called? Weather vane, right? Yeah, at Arapahoe and 57th or something. Um, so why do you, as the Transportation Advisory Board, sit by and watch the planning board make more trouble for you? Because then, your job is so much bigger and so impossible that you have nothing else to do. Like your time's consumed not taking care of potholes and the things I need on my bike. Christian, I need the link up for HRC. Thank you. 303-434-8128 right now. Bye. And the city cannot even get up a link, like I know you got your link up, but what does it say to me? I have to be spending my time instead of talking to you, getting up the link for the other meeting. You know, Sometimes these city issues are interconnected and they really infringe on the rights of your residents to get things done, to have their voice heard, for example. Um, Sundance coming here is no benefit, is no panacea. No, it's an impending nightmare. I was watching something on the Olympics today. Do you realize in 1976, I believe it is, We're the only city in the whole world that has ever changed our mind and denied having the Olympics here. In the same sense, Sundance has come here. There's huge subsidies to bring it. There's huge money around it. And it is not any benefit to Boulder. I'm sorry. But you had a place in saying something at planning board and to council on something that impactful to transportation in the city of Boulder. And, meantime, I can't get around town. I'm waiting, 2 or 3 minutes here and there at another arterial on my bike. I drive my car 4 times a year. But what are you saying to me? Like, sorry, we don't.
Thank you so much, Lynn. Blythe, would you like to respond to Lynn? Or
Sorry, it took me a second to mute. I made notes about some of the concerns about Sundance, and a good contingent of our staff is preparing as best we can for all kinds of things, welcoming visitors, and also hoping that people that are here that enjoy the festival will be able to move around using our multimodal system. I also made note of Arapahoe and the 57th, I believe, to see if there's an issue there that we can address. Other than that, no more comments. Thanks, Trini.
oh, thank you so much, Blythe, and thank you, Lynn. Well, thank you for your time, and now we move on to matters from staff.
I can introduce our speaker, Trini, if that's okay.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Blythe. Yes.
I'm delighted to be working with Heather Stauffer, who I realize started only a month before me, and seems as though she's gained the experience and knowledge of years. She's extremely knowledgeable about legislative matters as our intergovernmental affairs officer. And I was just commenting before the meeting started on how knowledgeable she is. And I'm so grateful that she's able to spend some time here today, sharing with us an update on the council's 2026 legislative priorities. Thanks for being here, Heather.
Thanks so much, Blythe. That's really kind of you. Really kind introduction. I'm pleased to be here to be able to talk about the council's 2026 priorities for the year. We can talk a little bit about legislation that we anticipate as well. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, so bear with me. Then, all right, can you all see my presentation?
Yes.
I'm hoping, yeah, great. All right, so as Blythe mentioned, I'm Heather Stauffer. I'm the Intergovernmental Affairs Officer for the City of Boulder. I've been here since August. However, I've been involved in municipal issues for the past 6-7 years over at the Colorado Municipal League. So municipal issues are nothing new to me, but I am still getting up to speed on the City of Boulder and our particular issues that we're interested in. So I'm going to go ahead and go over a couple of the issues that the city is engaged on, and also how we make decisions here related to policy. So first is our policy statement. Our city's policy statement really creates a framework that's intended to provide clear guidance for both staff and council, as well as set clear expectations for the community on how the city will handle various issues and topics that we encounter on the regional, state, and federal levels. We review that every year. So every year it's updated to reflect what we anticipate coming down the line, both at the state, regional, and federal levels. And the intent there is really to ensure consistent decision-making and consistent messaging in the advocacy space on behalf of the city. One of the key benefits of having a policy statement like we do in Boulder is that staff can use that as a guide. So I and my team that I work with really use it to allow for quick response time. We don't have to take every issue to council. we can reflect, and if it's addressed in the policy statement, we know how the city will respond. So that's important because being quick and quick response time is like crucial to advocacy and having effective advocacy work. It also ensures that we're using the majority of our political capital on identified priorities. Political capital is finite. We only have so much per year. We want to make sure that we're using our efforts in the right spaces and on identified priorities. So in my role, you'll see I'm right in there in the center, city advocacy team. Myself, along with Megs Valier and Megan Wilson Outcult, we handle the internal workings for the advocacy team for the city. We will make strategic decisions on policies that we see coming. We'll work to build coalitions and strategic partnerships to benefit the city. And of course, we track legislation and mobilize some timely responses based on that. And you'll see on the outside of the circle here, these are all of the people that we coordinate with: the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee that I'll go over in a minute, and City Council, city leadership, advocacy partners. Advocacy partners are gone more in depth over on the right-hand side of the screen. We work with regional governments, regional transportation districts, of course, the General Assembly at the state and the executive branch and the governor's office. And then on the federal level, we also interact with the legislative branch, federal labs, and then federal departments. So moving on, I've included City Council here. This is obviously not an updated picture. We don't have one quite yet, but I included them on city advocacy because they play a very large role in the city's advocacy efforts. Obviously, because of their positions, their voices, and their relationships, they really amplify our advocacy efforts and our message. As I mentioned, we have our Intergovernmental Affairs Committee, which I work directly with throughout the year. They work to help shape our policy statement and also our legislative agenda. So I'll meet with them once per month during the legislative session to go over bills and ensure that I have enough direction to take positions on bills if it's appropriate. So that's comprised this year of Mayor Brockett, Councilmember Benjamin, Councilmember Marquis, and Councilmember Spear is the newest addition there. So how we take positions on legislation. Once a bill has been identified, for example, I'll review that within the context of the policy statement. If there's sufficient language in our policy statement to guide our position, I'll start developing strategy around how we want to approach that bill or policy. As I mentioned, if I need to, I can take that bill to the IGA committee, and vice versa. They can request to hear bills and provide direction on those bills. If there's a particularly contentious issue, they may elevate that to the entire council. So last week we had a discussion about House Bill 1001, which is the Home Act, and they had identified that in IGA as a particularly contentious and political issue that they wanted to elevate to the entire council. So we had a council discussion on that. So these are some of our advocacy partners. In addition to the city, we work closely in coalitions outside of the city. Northwest Mayors and Commissioners Coalition, MCC, will be something that you are all familiar with, I'm sure. Colorado Municipal League, CC4CA, and then on the federal level, of course, we have the National League of Cities, amongst others. So how this translates into advocacy. So once we kind of have a policy or direction, I can work to translate that into action. So we obviously have some direct legislative engagement. Depending on the bill and the strategy around it, we'll decide if we want to have somebody there to testify on a bill. We'll have meetings, direct meetings with legislators and our legislative delegation, written comments, etc. Those groups that I just mentioned will work with our advocacy partners, regional coalitions, and then often cross-sector alliances with the chambers and others. We have strategic communication that's part of our advocacy efforts. We also participate in rulemaking often, and that's usually at a staff level, and I'll work with staff on that. And then technical assistance, we often, a lot of our advocacy work is education for legislators. And so we will offer technical assistance if legislators are looking for feedback on whatever policy that they're working on. I wanted to highlight in our 2026 policy statement, these are all of the policy statement items that talk about transportation. So you can see there are quite a few, and we address it very thoroughly throughout our policy statement. A couple updates to the policy statement that I wanted to highlight. We have added in our federal policy priorities to support federal transportation funding, and that is through passage of the Surface Transportation Reauthorization Bill. So we will be working on that. That's going through the process, probably more towards the towards March, April date. We'll hear more about that. And then a few other updates that we've made. We've added some new language around transportation and infrastructure funding. Depending on how plugged in you are on legislation, you'll know that the state is facing a massive funding shortfall this year. And so we felt it was important to be able to safeguard the funding that we have, in addition to asking for new funding, which we can ask, but that's not going to happen this year. And then we've added language to address automated vehicles. So that is a change from last year. And it just, because we are starting to see automated vehicles like your Waymos and things like that in the city and in the state, we thought we would beef up that section to give us a little bit more guidance on policies related to automated vehicles. We have also added language to address e-bikes and micromobility devices. So that is something that our council is very interested in, and I do anticipate there being some legislation addressing e-bikes this session. So, and then other legislation of interest, we have our little bill from Schoolhouse Rock here, you'll see. I can go over that quickly, but those are the end of my slides. Are you all, let me see. Are those down? You can see my face now. Great. Okay, so for this year for legislation, we are expecting a few bills that may be of interest. House Bill 1065 is something that we're following. This is the transit and housing investment zones. So this allows a municipality to use tax increment financing to invest in transit and housing around transit. So it would be upgrades to infrastructure around transit. So we are supporting that bill. It may be a tool that the city ultimately decides to use in the future. We're keeping a close eye on the RTD Accountability Committee recommendations. Those just came out. We know that there will be several pieces of legislation related to those, including the changes to the makeup of the board, Front Range Passenger Rail District changes. So we're keeping a close eye on those, and we'll engage in those when they become legislation. We're also aware of several pieces of legislation that increase penalties for traffic violations, for vehicular homicide and assault. So we're keeping our eye on that. That speaks to our policy statement. We haven't taken a position quite yet. I want to see where the legislation goes. The legislature doesn't love increasing penalties, so I want to see a little bit more where that ends up. I mentioned e-bike legislation. We haven't seen a draft on that quite yet, but I do know that something is coming this session that will address e-bike safety and put more parameters around that as well. So that's what I'm aware of this year. I'm happy to answer any questions folks have about any of the presentation about legislation. Yeah, so.
Thank you so much, Heather. So I do have a question, and it basically goes along with what you were speaking about right now. And like how often can we get updates on what the city's gonna support and how if we have any say as tab just as an advisory to what we may hear about or just be aware of that maybe hasn't gotten to you just yet.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I am always open to hearing about legislation that you are hearing about. So always feel free through Blythe or through Jean or any one of the staff that you interact with, let me know. I love hot goss. That's what we, you know, function off of. So anything you're hearing is great for me. The council ultimately makes decisions on how we engage and what that looks like, but always happy to hear about legislation that you might be hearing about. In addition, to keep up to date, we do have a public link to our bill list on our website. That's being updated now. So I can send you the link for that, but you can always take a look at that and see where we are on a piece of legislation and whether we've taken a position.
Have you, I know that you're new, have you had the opportunity to meet people at Bicycle Colorado?
I have worked with people in the past at Bicycle Colorado for sure. They're a huge presence at the Capitol.
Yeah.
And yeah, not yet in this role. I have not met with them.
I could certainly introduce you to some people if that would be
Love that.
helpful. Yeah, because they're working on really interesting things right now.
Definitely.
So I'll stop taking over the floor. And I think Darcy had her hand up first.
Michael was first.
Oh, I'm sorry, Michael.
I'm clicking here. I think my question is pretty similar to Trini's, though maybe slightly different. So I was not wondering so much about legislation that we've heard of that we bring to your attention, but to the extent council has decided to move, to take action in either pursuing the development of or providing comment on some legislation that touches on the realm of transportation, whether there will be an opportunity for us to engage relatively early in that process, like kind of in the drafting stage, as opposed to when things are kind of already out the door and being, kind of circulated widely. I'm asking because sometimes, it's harder to, if there's something that needs to be addressed in a draft legislation, I know from experience that it's hard to sort of wrangle that under control once it's kind of out of the barn.
Yeah.
People get kind of invested in the language they see, they react to the language they see, and I'm wondering if there's a way to sort of use the expertise of this group to head some of that off at the pass.
Yeah, I would probably ask Blythe or Jean or someone on staff to help me because I just don't know the process for that. But certainly if the city is initiating legislation that deals with transportation issues, I would imagine that we would bring it to this group for input. When we're dealing with legislation that is coming from a separate organization, it's hard to control what we see, although oftentimes we will see things ahead of time. But yeah, it's not always in our control I'm sure you understand that. But yeah, I'll chat with Blythe and see what the most appropriate role is and how we do that.
Thank you, Heather, and thank you, Michael. Darcy?
Yeah, thank you, Heather. Appreciate it. And there are other times that we can kind of weigh into during the interim session when TLRC is working on things, and when we see things in development, we can always discuss then as well. I just wanted to say that, even though City Council didn't adopt any of the specific things that we outlined in our letter as priorities, I'm really happy to see the priority on bike safety and interest in the e-bike, e-moto language that you displayed here. So I think those are very closely aligned with everything that we put forth. And I'm curious about on the AV notes. I know that Waymos are being sort of trained in Denver, and I wonder if Boulder has specific strategies. I mean, I see here some sort of, guidelines, but I wonder if the city plans to treat AVs like Waymo systems, like they did Lime scooters, seeing them kind of come, the scooter revolution happening, and then, the city saying, okay, we're going to study this and sort of create parameters before they come to the city. Is there what do you see as the kind of overarching approach to AVs in Boulder? I mean, I see your notes here, but I'm just curious about whether there's going to be a sort of policy first approach rather than
Yeah.
yeah.
I might ask Blythe to answer that question. That's a little bit in the weeds for me in terms of the city's plans. So I don't know, Blythe, if you have thoughts on that. We did have policy language before this addressing AVs. So I know it's something that has been considered in the past, but I'll kick it over to Blythe and his team to talk about that a little bit more.
Thanks, Heather. And I made a note on the last one too. This is one I'll have to make a note on and follow up. I don't know what the city's policy is on AVs quite yet, but perhaps Jean does. Jean?
Yeah, thank you, Heather, and thank you, Blythe. Just to add that the reason this policy is so important is because cities in Colorado at this point in time really have their hands tied as to what we are able to regulate for autonomous vehicles. So we really need enabling legislation by the state to be able to even begin developing regulation. So what you see in these policies is a framework around what we would like to see that statewide legislation look like so that we could then, when the time is appropriate, move forward with appropriate regulations that are consistent with our transportation goals and objectives.
Yeah, thank you, Jean. I appreciate that. And just, is that also how the micromobility legislation was created, or was it state first, or it's a different level of policy making, I assume?
It's really more about AVs operating on roadways as opposed to micromobility. That's a little bit of a different animal. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It's really interesting. I mean, I'm glad to see that you're involved in all those conversations at the state level. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jean. I believe Mike had his hand up.
Yeah, hi, Heather. Since you touched a little bit on your office's involvement with the federal executive branch, and we're still waiting on funding we've been awarded for Safe Streets for All. I wonder if that's something that city staff would work with you to check on, things like that.
Yeah, so if I'm remembering correctly, we just got an update from our federal lobbyists, and I believe that the bill that's containing that funding is moving forward. So I would expect to see that sometime soon. And I will just double check that I am thinking of the correct grant program, but I believe it was the Safe Streets that is moving forward. So we're hoping to see that pretty quick.
Heather, I believe it's the largest amount that you will see that the city awarded in the last like 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, then that's the right one.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the one I'm thinking of. So
yeah. Well, thank you so much, Mike. Does anybody else have any questions or comments? Oh, or none? Hernan?
Hi. So, hi, Heather. Thank you for your presentation today. I think my question is mostly just curiosity about like how's been the transition from Carl retiring to like you taking the reins of the team. I know that happened just a few months ago, so I was kind of curious, like, do you inherit his contacts, like his Rolodex? Like, how does that process work? Like, yeah, I'm just curious how like the behind the scenes for lobbying is.
Yeah, that's a great question. So advocacy in the advocacy space is a pretty small group of folks, actually. Feels like a lot, but I was with my work with Colorado Municipal League, I traveled in the same circles as Carl, so worked with Carl extensively. And so I had the benefit of jumping into this role, knowing a lot of the same people that Carl worked with.
Hmm.
I am getting to know more of the regional partners, some folks I didn't work with too extensively on the state level. So I'm getting to know some of the specifics there, but definitely Carl put me in a great spot to be able to reach out and meet those folks, and everyone has been more than willing to help. So getting up to speed has been great, and it takes a little while, but I feel pretty good about it. And Carl definitely left me in a good spot.
Nice. Okay, that's good to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, thank you, Heather. And if you need any support from any of us, please let us know. We're
Yeah,
here for that.
definitely. Thank you. I appreciate it.
No, you're welcome. And Blythe, I suppose you will be the one updating us on the council's 2026 legislative priorities moving forward.
I'm happy to do that, Trini.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be really helpful. I think everybody here is incredibly vested in what's going to happen and would really appreciate as much information as we can. Well, thank you so much, Heather, for your presentation. And if there are no further comments, we can move to matters from the board. Um, are there any board comments from tab members?
Yeah,
Who's that? Is that Mike? Yeah.
that's fine.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment to revisit my comments at the end of the last meeting, which I realized had some language that may have landed in a pessimistic way. But so I wanted to make three kind of points here. First, that I really appreciate the work that's been done since I've been on tab in passing the core arterial network and parking reforms and all sorts of things that staff's been working on. My question was regarding concern about funding, and I think I've been somewhat reassured about that in the month since then, that we have funding sources from DRCOG, and realizing we recently passed this transportation maintenance fee that will be going into effect this year, and we've been hearing about parking revenues that should be more sustainable funding for transportation department than sales taxes. And finally, I know things like core arterial network are really major infrastructure projects that can take a long time. And I recently had a change in perspective, learning about how we can improve our bike routes. In the meantime, while we're waiting for these improvements, there's this app called Bike Streets from this group in Denver that I would encourage everyone to use. You can record your rides. You can see low stress routes that are suggested. You can suggest low stress routes and vote on ones that other people have suggested. They're building bike maps of cities, started in Denver, and it's many U.S. cities now. Boulder was recently added, and I think it's very useful to have a low stress map for users, as well as a heat map of where people are riding, that can be used in a number of ways. So Bike Streets, check that out. Thanks.
Is it free, Mike?
Right now it is free. I believe it used to have a subscription, but right now it's free.
Yeah, it's free.
Oh, I'll look into that. That sounds really interesting. Thank you. Anybody else? No? Okay. So we have some future agenda topics.
Oh, is that like his hand?
I don't know, Blythe, would you like to speak to those?
Sure, be delighted, Trini. Let me get them in front of me. We're planning in March a couple of updates, one related to our Vision Zero Action Plan 2025 Annual Crash Landscape Update and Automated Speed and Red Light Running Enforcement Update, as well as an update on the Boulder Valley Comprehensive Plan as it relates to the public draft roadshow. We'll have visitors from Planning and Development Services on the latter, and Devin Jocelyn and his team will help us with an update on the former. And then in April, we're looking ahead to a Matters from Staff celebration of the 35th year of our community's EcoPass, and really excited about that. We also, now I'm seeing this and thinking it was March, so maybe somebody can correct me, but new member oath of office and election of officers in April. I believe that March is the first meeting, someone correct me if I'm wrong, for new officers. So that those two things will be happening in the next 2 months. And then in May, we'll have a capital improvement plan overview from Garrett Slatter and his team. And I didn't mention the EcoPass celebration through Stephen Reho and Allison Moore Farrell. That gets us 3 months down the road, Trini.
Thank you so much, Blythe. I think Darcy has her hand up.
Well, if that section is finished, I just wanted to go back to matters from the board. I did have my hand up during that time, and I.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't see you.
That's okay. I didn't jump in. I should have just jumped in, but I just wanted to remind everyone that this Friday, of course, is Winter Bike to Work Day, and that we have more than 40 breakfast stations now around the city of Boulder, which is amazing. So people could get out and eat all morning and not eat the rest of the day. So there's that opportunity. And Saturday, which is Valentine's Day, I'm also hosting the Boulder End-to-End Ramble, the 15-mile walk from Gun Barrel to South Boulder, which is a really fun community celebration. And I feel like right now, we need community celebrations and community togetherness and community experiences of our world-class infrastructure more than ever, because when we move together in an active way in our communities, we really demonstrate our commitment to the maintenance of those facilities and to the development of those facilities. And we also really demonstrate to each other how much we matter to each other. And so I encourage everyone to come out and to bring out people who might not normally do these things. Come and just walk a mile or two with us. You don't have to walk 15 miles. But it's really going to be a wonderful community celebration. We already have 50 people signed up, so it's really great. Not for the whole thing, just for, pieces at a time, but you don't have to do the whole thing. And I just think that, these kinds of celebrations, Bike to Work Day and, these long sort of walks that encircle or traverse our city really demonstrate our purpose here, which is to support, celebrate, and spread the word about everything that our city is doing to encourage both active transportation and connectivity, as well as community commitments to public spaces where we can be out together and getting to know each other and supporting each other. So that's what I wanted to add.
That's great, Darcy. Thank you so much. And thank you for leading this. I know this is something really important to you, and you do such an incredible job. So thank you, and hopefully everybody can join. I guess, did you touch on the CIP tour in May? Is that what we're talking about?
I did touch
Garrett
on.
usually leads.
Yes.
Okay, awesome. Wow, I cannot believe this. We're super early. So I think we're done. It's like unbelievable. Would someone move to adjourn the meeting?
I'll
Move
move
to
to,
it. Oh, God.
that always happens. I'll move to adjourn the meeting.
I second.
Second. All in favor, please say aye and raise your hand.
Aye.
Aye.
Well, thank you and good night. You guys, this was a very fast meeting. It was really nice to see everybody.
Thank you, guys.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, everybody.